Yeah, so we just had the Redefining Early Stage Investment Conference yesterday at the Marine Memorial Hotel, and we had 400 global early stage investors covering 10 categories of investors, everywhere from family offices and venture capital and private equity and foundations, endowments. So it was really quite a time. We had 350 fundraising CEOs, and we did about 900 meetings in one day. And so these conferences we put together to aid scientist entrepreneurs as well as fundraising CEOs be more efficient in their fundraising process, because it takes a lot of time and energy to do it. And if you go to one of our conferences, you can actually have about 20 meetings in a day, and we have them every 90 days. So you can go to, we just went to San Francisco, we're still in San Francisco. We're going to Houston at the Texas Medical Center in April, and then we'll be up in Mars, Toronto in June, and then we're back to Boston in September. So every 90 days, you can go on a trip around and meet investors. And so how many people here are actually raising money or trying to raise money? Okay, great. So if you think of how many meetings you've had with investors in a year, I would say maybe 12, 20 meetings is probably around that. But to be able to do 80 meetings can really help you out, because raising money is really a numbers game. So the more investors you talk to, the more dialogues you get, the more relationships you build, you have a better chance of raising money. So we talked a little bit about the Resi conference. The other thing we'll talk about here is we have a database that we curate, which we call the Life Science Nation Investor Database. So we have about 8 researchers in our company, and all they do is call investors on the phone globally and ask them what their current investor mandates are. So data comes in 2 states: out of date and very out of date. So the issue is, if you get a database, it has to be current, and if it's not current, it can be very tedious to try and update it yourself. So we call our investors every 90 days, and we check back in. Are you still have that mandate? Have you invested anything? Is anything new happening? And then we give them this survey, and then from the survey we write this profile, and then we send the profile to the investor. The investor reads it and tells us it's okay to put it in the database. And so then you go to the database and you say, I've got a small molecule for oncology, preclinical. You hit the button, and you'll get all of the investors that we know in the world that have told us they're investing in preclinical small molecules for oncology. So the folks that use our database, they really like it just because it makes them more efficient. So what we're trying to do is move science forward quicker, and in order to do that, we like to make people more efficient. We also have another database that we curate, which is the company database, where we track 35,000 startup companies, biotech, medtech, healthcare IT, and diagnostics. So a lot of the pharma companies, most of the pharma companies use our company database to give the information to their scouts so that their feet on the street can find the technology. And then a lot of the large CROs that are out there with Salesforce looking for funded CEOs to sell their services to, they also use the database. So we know all the fundraising CEOs, a lot of them. We know all of the investors. We have partnerships with all of the pharma companies and all the big service providers. So when we put our conference together, the Resi conference, we have the who's who of life science basically in 16 panels. And as I said, we were able to put together 900 meetings. So we really like to try and be that loosely affiliated global network that can help the fundraising CEO. We also have Boston Innovation Capital, which is basically a broker-dealer that we own. And for some of the people that we will put a package together and help them go raise money. And so we currently have one venture capital group that we're raising $150 million for, and we have a medical device that we're raising $15 million for, and then we have a diagnostic that we're raising $10 million for. So we're able to be helpful on many levels. The investor landscape has morphed, and we're seeing stuff like cured Duchenne, where you can go and get money from them, and they'll help take you down the clinical process. And I was just at Michael J. Fox Foundation in Manhattan last week, and they're doing the same thing. So non-dilutive money from them that will move you down the pipeline, which is great. But one of the things we like to talk about is referral versus fit. We talk to a lot of people who are raising money, and they say, well, geez, if someone doesn't give you a warm introduction to someone, then you can't go make a call. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And one of the things that you have to always keep in your head is that it's all about fit. So if you have an indication like brain cancer or glioblastoma, and you're going after a medical device guy that's specializing in feet, then there's no fit. And if somebody referred you to that guy, it's still not going to be a fit. And he's still not going to give you any money just because his friend referred you. So we always say, if you want to be efficient, you can go into a database and find investors that are looking for your stage and your indication. And then when you send them an email, you can say, I'm an LSN partner, I read your mandate, I'm a fit for your mandate, and they know that you've self-qualified yourself, and they've already given us the information to our researchers, and signed off on it and put it in our database. So there's a more likelihood that they'll talk to you because they've told us they're investing in glioblastoma. We talk a lot about marketing collateral and putting yourself in a position where it makes sense. If you're going to go after an investor with a 250-page PowerPoint and a website that's all scattered, doesn't make sense. Because they have so much quantity of people soliciting them, they really don't have a lot of time for people who aren't prepared. And so when we talk to investors, and I said we had 400 over at the Resi conference yesterday, they tell us if they get a referral, they'll spend 2 to 4 seconds if they go to the website, and if the website doesn't look right and it doesn't look professional, they're gone. So we spend a lot of time trying to help the entrepreneur do branding and messaging, which in the research and science world can sometimes be a couple of bad words, but when you get into raising money, you're actually doing marketing and sales. And so you have to really start to be aware of how your brand is and how your message is, and that everything has to be succinct. The other thing that's important is a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to go to my region, and I'm just going to start with my friends and families and my angel investors in my region, and then they're basically stuck. And because it's a numbers game, if you just stick to your region, you might be getting 40 or 50 targets, but if you're going global, you might get 400 or 500 targets. And in this day and age, it's okay to go global, and then people say, well, other investors that aren't in the United States don't invest in the United States. And we talk to investors every day, and we had $30 billion Asian investors at our conference yesterday, and they were all looking to take assets from the United States and bring them to their marketplace. And there was 30 of those guys there. So, they came, they vote with their feet, they got on the plane, and they went to meet people so they could find technology for their particular markets. So when we talk about the activity of raising capital, you have to go and create a web presence. And if you're going to do that, it's going to cost you about $25K. If you're going to go to a conference, you guys all got here today, so you know how much the round-trip ticket cost and the hotel cost. And if you do that 4, 6, or 8 times a year, you can do the math. If you're going to buy a database, it's going to cost you to get the list, and then all the stuff that you have to do in preparing yourself with your lawyers and your accountants and all that other stuff. So we think it costs between $60,000 and $90,000 a year to go out and raise money. Landscape has morphed because as people go into early stage, you're not just stuck with the old early stage folks who are friends, families, and angels. We now have pharmaceutical companies that are going out looking for early stage assets. We have private equity, we have family office. So there's a lot of people on the market looking for technology. We kind of say the old list looked like this, and the new list looks like this. And VCs have really gone and done a whole bunch of really interesting stuff. So a lot of them are now going and taking assets in-house and actually developing stuff in-house. And we know a lot of the venture capital folks in New York and that are doing early stage, but for some reason, we haven't seen a lot of VCs doing early stage these days. And the ones that we do know all show up at our conference and they are investing. But when you look at who's out there, family offices, foundations, venture philanthropy, which Kira Duchenne was just here, patient groups, private equity, hedge funds. We actually have mandates in our database from hedge funds that have side pockets of cash, and for one reason or another, they might be looking to invest. We'd like to just debunk some of the myths about raising money, that you have to go through SBIR grants, friends, families, and angels, and VCs. Well, there's actually 10 categories of investors that we track. So knowing all of those categories of investors and then marketing yourself to them is going to give you more chances of developing a relationship and then getting an allocation. We just talked a little bit about regional players. We've been doing this for 4 years, and I used to raise money for hedge funds and private equity funds before that for 5 years. So I've been in the business for about 10 years of raising money. And some people can do it in less than 9 months, but for the most part, it's somewhere between 9 to 18 months. And our first customer, it took them 15 months, and one of the guys was a Nobel laureate, and he had a fabulous piece of technology. It had great data, and it took him 15 months to go get his money. He was raising, I think it was phase 2B, and it was like 7 million or 10 million. But you've got to be able to get in it for the long haul. It's not necessary to really understand the category of investors you go after, because if you just put them in I'm an investor category and you don't do your research, then you're going to make some really big mistakes by wasting your time and their time if they're not a fit for you. A lot of the times scientists have a hard time when they see a salesperson like me and they say, I'm not like that, whatever that thing is over there, and I'm never going to be like that, and what am I going to do? But so I actually wrote a book because you have to understand that, you know, when you're in a laboratory and you do 100 experiments and one comes up that makes you real happy, you get a successful, positive result. It's kind of the same when you're doing marketing and sales. You make 100 phone calls trying to get a meeting and you get one meeting and you're happy. But you have to understand, we were raising, we were doing a fundraise for a person that had synthetic insulin for diabetes, and one of our staff made 21 phone calls to get, we saw this investor, we knew they were a fit, and on the 22nd phone call, he picked up the phone and said, I've got my schedule open, I'm so sorry, I want to meet Rick, let's schedule it right now. And so most people quit after their third phone call and forget going out to 9 or 10 or 15 or 16 or 20, but people who are really successful really go for it, and they, until somebody says, no, I don't want to meet you, you've got to go after it. So we always recommend to the fundraising CEOs, if you are a scientist and you look at the phone and the phone's staring back at you and you don't want to pick it up and go outbound, okay, we understand that, but you should find somebody that can do that. Somebody in your organization. It can be an admin, it can be a college student that just got out of college, you pay them 15 or 20 bucks an hour, and all they're doing is calling a list of people, and when they call the list, you're not selling them anything about your molecule or your compound or the marketplace, they're just saying, the CEO of my company has requested I set up a meeting, introductory meeting with you. They don't have to know anything, they don't have to be a scientist, they don't have to do anything, you just got to set up a meeting, and they've got to make those calls. So what we find that happens when people come in, we'll do the packaging for them, we'll set up the website, we'll get everything done, we'll give them a list, and then they're all ready to go, and then they won't go do the outreach that they need to do because they just don't have the genetic code to make phone calls, and I can understand that. But you've got to find somebody that will make the phone calls and will do the introductions, because that's how you're going to get in front of people, and that's how you're going to get allocations. Just like a scientist knows their universe, there's this other universe of business, sales, and marketing, and it's really as big a universe as all the other universes, so you really have to take time to understand some of the basics. The other thing that we find is when I see a scientist come into my office and he doesn't have a business guy with him, it always makes me feel like I wish you would go find a business guy. So my first question is, do you have a gray-haired, silver-tongued devil in your stable of friends that you can be part of this? Because when investors look at folks, they want to see the science, they want to see a great scientist and a great researcher with great results and great data, but they also want to see a business guy because they're giving you money. And they want to make sure that if you're going to go raise some more money or you have to go do some other stuff or they're part of a fundraise, that you can do that. So, having somebody that's a business person, that's, when we see the old guy like me comes walking in with the young scientist, I'm like, this is going to be good. But when I see the young scientists come walking in, like I saw a lot of them yesterday, and they're going, so a friend of mine is going to Europe. Should I give them a contract in case they run into somebody so someone can invest in me? And I'm like, are you serious? Like, don't you know you need to talk to these people and they have to talk to you and you got to like each other and have things in common and be a fit? And he's just looking at me like, oh, I just thought it was that easy, but it's not that easy. So we want to prevent people from making mistakes that hurt. So here's the 10 categories of investors: angel groups, corporate VC, endowments, foundations, family office, government. So these are the folks you want to go after, and a lot of people go, well, I just want to go after the family offices. It makes sense to me. They've heard something about a family office, and they go, oh, there's a person with a lot of money. I'll just get the money from the family office. And there are family offices out there that are interested in investing in science. And there are family offices that might have Alzheimer's or cancer or alcoholism or drug addiction or some kind of problem in their family. And they're willing to put some money in it to go find some research. So you got to assess your company. You got to do the marketing collateral. You got to get a global target list. You got to get a cloud-based application to manage the list. So if you give a list of 500 investors that you're going to go after to a scientist, they'll create a multicolored spreadsheet to track it, and it just can't be done. So there's a group called Salesforce.com, which are actually headquarters here in San Francisco. They've been around for 25 years, and every single salesperson in the world uses Salesforce.com. It's $5 to $10 a month on the cloud-based application. We integrated our database into Salesforce.com, so you can basically get your list, and then when you go in, you say, I just did a mailing, you get a report, these 50 people clicked on my website and did my bio and looked at the management team, so I'm going to go reach out and call that guy. So you have 500, you take a list of 50 that do, and you put a task, you got to call them back, and then as you start to automate your process of using that global target list, you basically have created a campaign, and now you're doing campaign management. And so when you wake up in the morning and you turn on your computer and Salesforce.com says, hey, we've got 3 phone calls today with potential investors. We have a follow-up call. We have to get this guy some data we promised, and we got to send this guy a white paper that we've been working on. So you've done all of the things that you need to do, and you're completely organized, and when you get the guy on the phone, you pull up the notes from the last conversation, you are aware of what you talked about, and you can get up to speed very quickly. So, these are just, sales 101 tools. You're going to get a list of people that fit. You're going to get some automated software to help you keep track and be organized. We go into campaign execution and, logistics and scheduling. But, once again, we say when you go to the meetings, you got to do the follow-up, and the follow-up is 99% of the time is which will get you. So when we talk about how do you package yourself, you have to have a logo, and it can't be a Viking ship, and it can't be a bridge, okay? It's just, we're all out of those. You've got to do something that makes a little bit of sense and hopefully is going to be recognizable. A tagline, which basically distills your message in 5 or 6 words. So at the Resi conference yesterday, everybody is in sales mode. And so when you reach out your hand, I call it the last 3 feet. You reach out your hand and shake somebody's hand. They're going, hey, how you doing? I've got this particular product or this particular service, and in 5 or 6 words, they're completely nailing what they do. And so if an investor is on the other end of that handshake, when you're given those 5 or 6 words of exactly what you do, and it resonates, then you can go into the next thing, which is the elevator pitch, and say, so really, what's so different about you? Well, we're doing combination therapy with Cure Duchenne, and combination therapy made the lives of AIDS patients a lot longer and better. We think we can do the same for that. And all of a sudden the guy's going, oh, really? Now you've got my attention. Now tell me more. So being prepared to get it straight on who you are and what you do, and then give it to them in a couple of 5 or 6 sentences is super important. The executive summary. So if you guys have an indication and that indication has a marketplace and that marketplace has investors that invest in that marketplace. So spending 4 pages on explaining why the diabetes marketplace is so big to a guy that's going to be an expert in diabetics is a waste of everybody's time. He knows the market size. He gets it. So what you want to do is you want to be able to, in a 2-page executive summary that you might be able to put into your email or link to your website with your executive summary, you really want to nail some of the points that are super important for you to get through. And it's going to start with your tagline. So when you see someone's logo, right under that logo is the tagline, and then anything you send out to somebody should have that, because you want to make sure that they can get exactly who you are really, really quickly. Slide deck, you can't have a 250-page PowerPoint presentation. It's got to be 10 to 12 pages. It's got to make a lot of sense. And then your website. So when we give out a mandate, we'll go through the interview process, and we'll talk about the allocation information, where it is, their sectors and subsectors of interest, what they expect from a company management team, the message from the investor. So a lot of the people that we talk to, because they get inundated, they kind of use my company as a filter. So if you send them an email and say, I'm an LSN partner, and this one right here says, mention LSN in the conversation or in the email. It's just a way to get for them to know that you're a fit for them, so therefore they should return your phone call or they should return your email. We talked a little bit about creating your global target list, and if you do it for people that are a fit, if you just spam people, it's 1 to 2%. If you kind of go, I think I'll go life science investors, you're probably going to get a 5 or 15% hit. But if you do it highly targeted, I know this guy's investing in brain cancer, then you're going to get up to a 50% hit rate. And we measure this all of the time. We do all sorts of campaigns for 4 years, and we keep metrics on everything. So we know that to do 40 meetings in 4 months, you need to send around 700 emails and make 500 phone calls. And we've measured it time and time and time again. You've got to find the person that can make the phone calls and set up the meetings, and if it isn't you, you've got to go find someone to do that. And if you can't do that, you've got to get a third-party person to do it. And if you're getting a third-party person to do it, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So I always say go $15, $20 an hour, college student, 30 hours a week making phone calls, setting up meetings would be great. Thank you.